Deb Hoffman, Guinness World Record holder of the largest Winnie the Pooh collection in the world. It's kind of interesting. Over the years as being a collector, many times people make the assumption that being a collector and having Guinness World Record is all about the items. Items, items, items. What's the next item? I'll admit, having the items is fantastic. I love this yellow bear to pieces, and I'm always excited when I find something that I don't have. However, after about a couple of years, Gary and I noticed that we were doing things that we probably wouldn't do if it weren't for the collection. We've certainly met people that we wouldn't have met because of the collection. I don't know that we would have gone to England and France, at least in the manner in which we did, if it weren't for the collection. Would we go to Canada every year? Probably not. Would we have ever found White River? I'm guessing we wouldn't have. We have hundreds and hundreds of people in our lives because of being a collector. And so really, even more so I think than the items themselves, one of the things that I really enjoy about being in the Guinness World Records and being a collector is all the people that we've met and the experiences. Case in point, this week I was contacted by a student in England. She goes to the School of Creative Arts, and she's a graphic designer. And her project was to identify what is it that makes people collect certain items and how do they categorize them. Well, believe it or not, she's a Winnie the Pooh fan too. Isn't everybody? So anyway, while she was doing her research, she found me, of all people, she found me. And so she reached out and asked if I would do an interview to help her with her project. And of course I said yes. So again, would I've ever met this gal in England? Probably not if it weren't for the collection. So real excited to show you the interview that we did. I'd like to introduce you to Victoria.
Well, I am so excited to talk to you. I always say that Winnie the Pooh makes the world a little bit smaller because I've had a chance to meet people basically from all over the world. So this is fantastic. So thank you for asking me to chat today.
Well, thank you for giving me the opportunity. So let's start with how old you were when you started collecting, and is your collection still growing?
Well, the collection is definitely still growing. I first received my first Winnie the Pooh when I was 2, and so my parents gave me a Winnie the Pooh plush. And so I don't know if you can start that as collecting, but because I only had maybe 8 when I was younger. But I always loved Winnie the Pooh. But you know, as a normal child, I grew out of stuffed animals. But then when I got into my 20s, I think I have a collector gene in my DNA. I started collecting telephones. And so novelty telephones, so like a hamburger phone, a hot dog phone, you know, different interesting phones. And there was a phone store across the street from where I worked. And so I would go in there, and there was a Winnie the Pooh phone in there. And I thought, geez, that's really kind of cool. I loved Winnie the Pooh as a kid. So I went into the store for about 6 months, and then one day it was gone. Somebody bought the phone. Okay, so for 6 months, I didn't need that phone. Now I needed that phone. So I actually, this is before internet, before eBay and online auctions. I actually placed ads in newspapers across the United States. And I finally found somebody who had the Winnie the Pooh phone. I bought it. And I think it was the hunt that kind of like got me excited. And it's the Winnie the Pooh phone that has the butterfly in his hand. And so this phone didn't have a butterfly, so now I had to find the butterfly. And so it sucked me in more with the hunt. And so before I know it, I'm seeing Winnie the Pooh, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I better get that one before it disappears. And before you knew it, I was back into Winnie the Pooh.
So that leads on to asking if collecting has become somewhat addictive for you.
You know, I don't know if it's addictive, but it's definitely become part of our lives. So I think in the beginning it was about, oh, cool, let's buy this item and let's display this one. But then it led to, particularly after I entered into the Guinness Book of World Records, it ended up being that I ended up meeting people. I ended up having adventures to go find an item, and so it became fun. It became part of our lives. My husband, I would say is the best part of my collection, is very indulging and very encouraging. And so a lot of the things that we've done, a lot of the people that we've met have been because of the collection. So isn't it addiction? I mean, I don't know that I would label it addiction as much as definitely a fun part of our lives.
Amazing. So how much would you be willing to pay to have an item in your collection? Is there a specific number? Or
It's interesting because I think a lot of times, especially if people have a Winnie the Pooh item they want to sell, they expect that I'm going to pay any amount of money for it.
Mhm.
And I'm actually very, very frugal and very careful. As much as I have many, many items, I won't just pay any dollar amount to get an item, particularly if I don't feel that the value is there. And so, you know, a lot of the items that I have are from thrift stores. Many of them aren't in perfect condition. And so maybe I've only paid 49 cents for it. And so when somebody comes back with a large dollar amount that they want for something, again, I think because I'm the collector, the Winnie the Pooh collector, they expect that, yeah, I'll pay anything, and I won't. Probably the most expensive item that's in my collection, I mean, this is a lot of money, but I only paid $4,000 US. Everything else doesn't even compare to that dollar amount. Most items are 100 or under, and most are $10 or under. And so I'm actually very, very careful with what I spend.
okay, wonderful. Would you be able to give any of these items away, or are you attached to them?
Well, it's interesting. Many times I'll buy a collection because let's say there's 20 items and I want 7 of them. Well, 13 of them I don't need, because in order to be in part of the Guinness World Record, each item has to be uniquely different. So like if I had 2 of these shirts, I would only count as 1. So many times I'll end up having duplicates, and what I many times will do is Gary and I will go to Canada and MC Winnie's Hometown Festival in August. And so many times I'll take my duplicates and I'll either donate them to the museum up there so that they can sell them, or I'll donate them to their previously loved Winnie the Pooh bin, and the other people in town can actually purchase them.
Lovely. Do they resonate with you on a personal level somehow? Does the story of Winnie the Pooh resonate with you on a personal level?
You know, I've had that asked before, and at first I had to ponder about what that actually meant to me. But I think more often these days, what resonates with me is that Winnie the Pooh is simple. He has friends, they have issues, they come together, they solve the issue by the end of the story. And maybe I wish that's what the world was like today, particularly today. Everything is such in chaos. I think when you look at Winnie the Pooh, all the characters really have the personality of everybody in the world. And so you have all these personalities, but all these personalities come together to solve an issue. And maybe more than anything, in my heart, I wish that's the way the world was. And so maybe that's why I continue to love the Winnie the Pooh stories.
Okay. In your home, are the items in categories? Do you put them in little compartments, or is it all at random? Because
I'd say there's both. Many times I'll try to, like, say, put all the classic Pooh in one area. And I like to, if there were 4 items, like say a Pooh, Piglet, Tigger, Eeyore, and they all came out at the same time for Easter, and they all have different Easter outfits on, I'll try to keep those 4 together. But quite honestly, with the quantity that I have, sometimes it's a little difficult. And so you might look at it and say, that's awfully random. Many times there's a method to my madness, but sometimes it's like, no, they just look cute together.
so right now, do you know the official number of items that you have?
Well, the mail hasn't come. So
Okay.
the number right now is 21,165 unique items.
Amazing. So would you say that you collect them for the aesthetic, or just because it is that one particular unique item, or what do you like about them?
You know, I think it makes me smile. And And what I really like about different items is maybe how I had to acquire them, who I had to acquire them from, what research did I have to do to acquire them. And so almost every item, not all, but I would say, boy, 70% of the items, if I pick them up, I have a story. I could probably tell you a half an hour story about how did I find it? You know, what did I have to do to get it? Where did I go to get it? Who did I meet on the way? And so everyone has such a story. And I think more than collecting the items these days, I'm collecting the stories. And so that's I think what's so compelling about collecting for me.
I think it's interesting that you say that, because I interviewed another collector of Winnie the Pooh books. She just collects, and she told me something similar. So I think she likes the memories that go with the books, just like you like the stories that go with your items, because it gives them some background and some meaning.
It's interesting. Probably it wasn't. I was recently, a couple of years ago, I was on a TV show called Collector's Call, and the show was all about the different collectors and what they collected. And before season 1 aired, the broadcast company had all the collectors come together for a kickoff party. So this was really the first time that I had been around a lot of collectors. And it was interesting, as we all started talking and sharing our stories, you know, I always thought that I was kind of like Tigger. I was the only one that felt this way about collecting. But it was interesting to see a common thread with collectors. And in talking with people throughout the years about the collection, I think you either get it or you don't. You know, some of my friends, even my family, I think I'm that aunt that you don't want to talk about. Oh yeah, that's Deb. We don't talk about her, because they think that the collecting part is odd. But then you'll have somebody else that gets it. And I have one family member that when he's out and about, he goes to a lot of thrift stores. He will text me anytime he finds something Winnie the Pooh. He asks, do you need it? Do you need it? And if I don't have it, he'll purchase it. And then like once a month we get together and he has all these items he's found for me. So he gets it. He gets the fun of the hunt. Sometimes I think he's having more fun than even I am when he's at a thrift store. He's so excited if he finds something that I don't have. And he gets so disappointed if it's something that I do have. He's like, oh darn, I thought I had one. And so it's interesting. You either get it or you don't, and collectors get it. And so it's something interesting, I think, that I've really come to learn over the last couple of years.
So what do you think makes a good collector? Is there such a thing?
You know, it's interesting. There's different types of collectors. I'll give you an example. I ended up connecting with the Guinness World Record holder of the largest Smurf collection in the world. Believe it or not, she only lives about an hour from me in Wisconsin. And so her and I collect very differently. So she came down to go thrifting with me, and so we call it adventure shopping. And so I have several thrift stores within, let's say, an hour's drive. And so she came down, and so we went to each one of the stores. She was looking for Smurfs, I was looking for Winnie the Pooh. And so she came down and she didn't have a Smurf shirt on, and I was shocked. And she's like, oh no, I don't wear my clothes. I'm like, do you use your mugs? Nope. Everything stays pristine in a box. And that's how she displays. And she only wears something or uses something if she has two of the item. And I thought to myself, wow, that's really interesting. I display my items. I wear my clothes. I have more mugs in my cabinet than I can tell you. And I use a different one every day. And so it was interesting to see how she collected versus how I collected. So the funny part is that she didn't understand I was wearing a shirt. We went out to lunch, and when we were out to lunch, the waitress inadvertently spilled soda on my arm and on my shirt. And she said to me, see, that's why I don't wear my t-shirts. And so we had a big laugh about that. And so it was interesting. I don't know if there's a right way or a wrong way, but there's definitely different ways.
Okay, thank you.
So I think a good follow-up question to that would be, how do I categorize my items as far as how do I have them in a database, and I actually do. I have a database. Going back to Guinness World Records, you have to, when you submit your collection to be adjudicated, you have to prove to them that the items are yours and different, because they don't necessarily come out to adjudicate your collection unless you pay to have them come out. And so my husband, who is a programmer, wrote me a very specific database so that I can have pictures, where did I get it, who's the manufacturer, how much did I pay for it, was that different than what the price was originally, who is the character, and enough description that he also wrote an app for me so that when I'm out and about and I'm in the store and I'm not sure if I have this item or not, I can type some information into the app and it'll come back with pictures that match my description. And so that way I'm able to make sure that if I'm out, I'm not buying a duplicate, because after about 13,000, and it was hard for me to remember, do I have it or not? So many times the app saves me from buying one that I already have. And so that's how I categorize mine. So I have a database and then the app.
So that sounds like a catalog in itself, because I'm trying to do right now. So
yep.
It's very for me. And I think what I would also like to know is if you prefer the Disney version or the originals.
That's really challenging, because I love them both for different reasons. I love the classic for more the nostalgia. I love the Disney because of the pop of color. You can see in the room in the background, when the sun comes in, when the sun sets, the room glows with orange. And so I love that. I have to say that there have been a few books out in the last 10 years illustrated by an illustrator named Mark Burgess. And he does more the classic, like Shepherd, but he has his own flair. I have to say, I absolutely love his illustrations. Just absolutely fantastic. They just came out with a book for Pooh's 95th anniversary or birthday, and it's called Once There Was a Bear. And he's the illustrator, and I was so excited. The illustrations are absolutely beautiful. So I think I like all Winnie the Pooh, but I definitely like Disney. I definitely like Mark Burgess's version.
Okay, well, thank you. I think those were all of my questions, actually.
Outstanding. So now I get to ask you a question. How did you get started with Winnie the Pooh?
I started with Winnie the Pooh. It goes back to my childhood, and my mum used to read me the books ever since I was little, maybe 3 years old or so, and eventually I started basically memorizing the whole story. I when she was reading, I would know what's going to come next. I would interrupt her, and that's how it started. It was started with the books and with illustrations, and I think it feeds into what I do now because I illustrate as well. So it all goes back to it.
Fantastic. So do you see yourself possibly trying to get involved with illustrating Winnie the Pooh someday?
If I get to a good enough standard where I feel like I won't ruin it, and I'll do it justice because it's special, you know. It will take a lot of practice for me to do that, because it's quite a sentimental project, I think. So maybe one day I would like to.
I will look for your name in the books, and so I will be most excited to see if I can find one by you. So that would be fantastic. So what do you hope to do after you graduate?
I think I will probably take the direction of branding, because I do graphic design. So I want to focus on businesses and logos and all of that, but the illustration will always be there as my kind of outlet.
Fantastic. Well, I'd love to see some of your work someday, and certainly if you take on the task of trying to illustrate Pooh, I would love to see your version of him. That would be fantastic.
I do illustrations of Winnie the Pooh, I will always remember to send you some.
That would be awesome. I would love to have your original in the Guinness Book of World Records in my collection.
Maybe I will send you a signed copy one day.
That would be fantastic. Absolutely. I would treasure that.
I would be actually honored if you had one of my drawings in your collection. So for me, that would be like a very big achievement.
Well, it's interesting. I many times have people send me things that they've collected that they're kind of ready to downsize. One of my favorite items that was given to me recently was it's called a sit-on. It was basically like a chair that had Winnie the Pooh's head on it, and she had it since she was little, and she's in her 50s now, and so she's brought it with her to every house that she's ever had, every apartment, and so her partner was kind of like, can we get rid of this thing? And you could tell in her voice she wasn't ready to get rid of it. So she called me and she asked if I would take care of it for her. And so it was very honored, and I told her I would. And so when it arrived, what I did is I took a picture of where it was in the room so that she could visualize where her item now was living. And she was just so taken back and so honored. So I will do the same for you. So at such a time that you decide to do a Pooh illustration, I will frame it and I will show you where it's going to be hanging in the collection.
That's wonderful. And that's very kind of you. Really, really very kind. And thank you so much for taking the time out of your day to do this for me, because it will really help a lot with my research to have first-hand insight into the mind of someone who collects so much and someone who is interested in Pooh, because I think it's amazing.
Thank you for reaching out, and if I can ever be of assistance in the future, definitely feel free to connect with me. I love connecting with other Winnie the Pooh fans.
Okay, well, thank you so much, and have a good afternoon there right now, I suppose. Okay,
have a good night.
Bye.
Bye-bye.